if you do have, or you're building a game that has the potential to go viral on Shorts, I think it's one of the best ways to market your game.
Today's guest got over 5 million views on one short, and he's turned his short-form strategy into over 50,000 wishlists and has created a rabid fan base around his first game.
Most people, what they'll do is they'll open the loop in the beginning, then close it immediately in the second sentence, and then people just swipe away. So you really have to make a conscious effort and really try really hard to not answer your own question or your own statement that you've put out initially, even if it's completely outrageous, right?
This is Tim Bearche, and he is a first-time developer who is a former copywriter and is now making his first game, which is literally designed to make players overwhelmed and motion sick.
I still kind of wanted to lean into this kind of evil persona where I'm building this abusive game that tries to make you motion sick and experience all of these negative feelings. I'm trying to see how much abuse gamers can take. And so I'm building a game that attacks, all of your senses and gets worse with every single level. Seeing all of these other people, my brother, my wife getting very, very nauseous just looking at it. There is one thing that I kind of want to call out, which is people feeling like they're being kind of suppressed by the algorithm. I call BS on all of that. Like if I post a short and it does terribly, the first thing I'm asking is, what did I do wrong? Like what did I screw up so badly that I didn't go viral? I don't think you should ever say everything that you want to say in a script. You should only say the stuff that you need to say in order to make it go viral. I look at every single sentence and I try to figure out whether or not that sentence makes me want to read the next sentence. I don't think AI is good at writing interesting hooks. I don't think it's good at writing interesting ideas.
And that's just scratching the surface. This episode is packed with information and advice from Tim on how to get your game in front of more people.
Never explain, never teach unless...
Can you start just by telling me, what is sensory overload?
Hi, Blake. Thanks for having me here. Happy to talk about the game. Been doing that for 8 months now. It started off as a super simple kind of physical therapy experiment for myself. We can talk about that a little bit later, how I came up with the idea. But essentially, I broke my elbow and I had to kind of relearn how to use it again. And, I wanted to do something fun and something simple behind the computer, learn how to hold the mouse again because it was my because I broke my right arm. So, kind of started as a simple experiment, put some stuff together. Essentially got really inspired by Minecraft droppers when I saw them on the short with a broken elbow, and I saw this really cool concept where, because I wasn't really familiar with Minecraft all that much, I didn't play it a lot, and I didn't know that they had whole mods and levels built around it, and one of those happened to be like this really cool short that I saw from I don't know which streamer it was. But he was standing on the edge of the world and the whole world was tilted like by 90 degrees. So the trees were growing from horizontally. And he jumped off that world and was kind of dodging all the trees and all the obstacles. And then he hit the water at the bottom. And I figured, wow, that's actually pretty cool. That looks really fun. And then he did it a couple of times. And I remember this was in a single short. So like 30 seconds, 40 seconds tops. And he jumped a couple of times, and every jump was like maybe 5 to 10 seconds. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is really cool, but it's so short. I wish it kind of kept going for a little bit longer. And so I kind of sat behind my computer with that thought and just tried to put a game where you're falling through something and then avoiding obstacles as you go. And that's how, the initial prototype was built. I built a tunnel and with a bunch of obstacles moving and you falling through that tunnel and avoiding those obstacles. Super simple. But then, kind of a thought hit me where I was like, hey, maybe it'd be really fun if the tunnel would kind of twist and rotate and do all of these crazy movements. And I put that together, had, a bunch of fun playing it around. That was essentially it. That was my whole goal for the entire thing. I was fully willing to kind of stop the project right there and not continue. Just some fun that I had for myself. And then I showed it to my brother. And he within like 10 seconds of watching me play this prototype, was like, I can't watch this. I'm getting super dizzy. I have no idea how you're playing this and enjoying this. It's making me nauseous. I'm sorry, I can't watch you play this. And I was really taken aback because I had some fun. I, never even considered in my mind that this was uncomfortable to watch in any sort of way. So I called my wife and I showed her the prototype that I built, and she flipped out. She called it the worst thing anyone has ever made. Like, she felt incredibly incredibly ill, like, watching it. And it was like, she was like, there's just no one in the world would play a game that makes them motion sick. And I was really surprised because I didn't feel sick at all while playing it. And but that kind of made me consider things a little bit, think about the game, and kind of wanted, out of pure spite, to get back at my wife and prove to her that there was at least a couple, kind of crazy gamers out there who don't get motion sick and would enjoy playing this crazy game. And so I recorded a super short video talking about the game and posted it on YouTube, and got like 5 million views in a week. And that's how this entire thing went from just a stupid little prototype I was playing with into, hey, maybe I can actually build something out of it and, make a whole game.
Yeah, it's going to be a real challenge for me to edit this video because people have been requesting gameplay footage on top of these podcasts, and I've been starting to implement that. So I'll have to be very cautious not to overwhelm the viewers that might be motion sick. A lot of cool threads. I'm really excited to talk to you today because even just in that setup, there's a lot of different directions I want to go. I want to ask about the feelings of these gamers. I want to definitely get into this marketing piece. That's actually how I got connected with you. As a prior guest, Jason Lovett, actually said I kind of was inspired by this other developer that was sharing. So tons to talk about that I'm excited today. Let's just stick with, for now, continuing to talk about the game itself. You have this inspiration from this Minecraft game you see, and then you start to share it with people who have this really strong aversion to it. Are you worried that aversion will keep too many players away? Or also you have these shorts that are really popping off? How are you thinking about the target audience for this game? Or, what's going on there?
So when I started building the game and when I first started sharing it and going viral on shorts, I still kind of wanted to lean into this kind of evil persona where I'm building this abusive game that tries to make you motion sick and experience all of these negative feelings. And that was my initial goal. That was also the first hook that I used in the first video. I said, I think it was, I'm trying to see how much abuse gamers can take. And so I'm building a game that attacks, all of your senses and gets worse with every single level, something like that. And people really resonated with it. And then it kind of, the whole experience of me not feeling motion sick and actually enjoying it, surprisingly enjoying it, and then seeing all of these other people, my brother, my wife, getting very, very nauseous just looking at it, I realized that there had to be some subset of gamers who would actually enjoy this. And a big confirmation of that was kind of the first short going viral, and then just having thousands of comments of people asking, "Hey, where can I play this?" Right? I never set out to build a game that's comfortable for everyone, and I wanted to build a crazy game that's super fun for a specific subset of gamers. How big that chunk is, I've no idea. I don't know how many copies it'll sell. I don't know how well it'll go, but it was just started off as kind of a joke project, and it seemed to have found an audience, I think.
Yeah, one thing I was curious to ask you about in your kind of design philosophy of this game is that a lot of games sort of try to solve for this state of flow, not being too easy, not being too hard. You're in this sweet spot of flow. With your game and the way that it can really overwhelm your senses, literally called sensory overload, are you just trying to find a state of flow for the gamers that aren't really bothered by it, or is there a sort of the difficulty is almost the sensory overload, or how are you thinking about this state of flow?
I think it's both. And I think for a subset of gamers who are really into it, and I have really passionate viewers that watch all of my shorts, I think for them and for myself as well, when I play the game, just because it is so visually stimulating, that's what induces a state of flow, at least in me and I think in a lot of the players. I think difficulty is another fantastic lever here to use, just for the kind of one more try thing feel that the game really does have going a lot. Even in the demo, people have been putting in thousands of attempts into a single level trying to beat it, and I think that's part of the charm. And I was really trying to go for. And I was really inspired by Geometry Dash here, where as soon as you kind of hit an obstacle and die, you basically almost immediately respawn. I think I recorded a gameplay session with me playing Geometry Dash, trying to time how long it took for the player to die and to respawn. And it was like, I think it was less than 1 second. So kind of, I tried to do essentially the exact same thing. And I think that was a really good idea in terms of the design philosophy. Some people don't enjoy it, so I have kind of an accessibility setting to make you pause, but the vast majority of the players are just really enjoying that fast restart loop.
Yeah, I can see how that in of itself could keep you in a flow. Like there's almost no interruption to the gameplay. I was also curious, how do the levels work? Are they endless? Does each level have an end? It sounds like maybe if players are trying to complete them. And how do the levels work? Like, are you trying to manipulate different senses here, or just kind of what's some of the design pieces that have actually gone into this game?
Sure. So when I started off, I was just building out a ton of different effects. So whether the tunnel is rotating, whether it's twisting, whether I have a really cool effect called reverse perspective, where things further away get larger instead of smaller. And that also kind of, messes with your mind and then distance perception and all of that. And then, I built all of these crazy effects that I've then kind of experimented a lot with and tried to combine them in different ways and figure out what works and what not. And out of that, I've kind of created a set of different levels, and each level is split into stages. So stages is essentially kind of like a traditional level, right? Where it has a start and a finish. And when you finish, you get a score on the leaderboard, how well you did and all that. And then you progress to the next stage. And the stages are basically checkpoints within a level. And then once you complete all of the stages, you've beaten the level, essentially. But I do have endless play for every single stage. And then I have a procedurally generated stage for the end of each level that just goes on forever and gets crazier over time. That's essentially how the design behind that works.
Very cool. And how did you decide which levels or how much content to put in your demo? I saw that you have a demo live now. So how did you do the content, sort of, hiding some of it or not hiding some of it? What was your decision there?
So I knew I was going to go for the initial effect that was really popular on shorts, which is the tunnel twisting effect. Kind of wobbles around all the time. And that was going to be the first level anyway in the final game. I call it Tornado. I decided to just put it into the into the demo, but I started first with a playtest. I had 3,000 players sign up for it in my Discord. I was really excited to launch it, and they've really massively helped out the demo and everything with all of the bugs and everything that were initially in the playtest build. And initially, I only released, I think, it was the Tornado level. And then I kind of wanted to test and see how they respond to a different sort of effect. A tunnel curve effect, where the tunnel curves either upwards or downwards, or essentially any degree bend. And then so I released a couple of stages of a level I call Inception, which I knew was going to be just a placeholder thing. So those levels, that specific level isn't coming to the release build because I've completely overhauled it. But I was kind of, just threw out a little bit more content, and people were having a lot of fun with it. So at the end of the playtest, I was kind of like, what, I'm just going to release both of these two levels for the demo. And I think that was a good decision. There's, if I'm always shocked when I go through the reviews and see people with 10, 20, 30 hours leaving reviews on the demo. It's really amazing. And I think having that kind of volume of content and showing what the possibilities are has kind of helped the overall kind of just experience of playing it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And 3,000 people in a Discord is quite a lot to manage for a playtest. So just kind of technically, how did you actually manage that playtest? How did you gather feedback and
Okay.
then put that into play?
So I was so initially when I went viral with the first short, I didn't have a Steamworks account set up. I didn't have a Discord set up. I really wasn't expecting to go viral in any sort of way. I wanted to get like 20 people commenting, "Hey, this looks fun," just to show to my wife and say, "Hey, you see, there's like 20 people. There's more than one that would play this game." So I didn't have anything set up, and then I knew that there was going to be an approval process to Steamworks before I get the page set up and everything. And I was just thinking about how do I even start, kind of collecting people in one place to kind of build a community around it. So I built a Discord server. I knew nothing about managing Discord servers before that. So essentially, I just put together the server, and then I just created a few rooms, just, really bare bones kind of stuff. And I posted my second short, and then I pinned the first comment saying, "Hey, join my Discord if you want to follow development." And then I had a link to it in my bio, and I got 1,000 people joined within the first 24 hours of me setting up that Discord.
That's amazing.
It was completely. It was a complete shock, not only to me but to the people joining it as well, because they were like, "Hey, there's 1,000 of us here. Am I seeing this right? This was just set up today. What the hell is going on?" So it went crazy really fast, and then essentially the entire Discord was kind of self-managed by the community because I knew nothing about what I was doing. And they, as people were joining, it grew into 5, 6, 7,000 people, and I really didn't have a huge, or I didn't really know how to manage that community because I've never done that before. But they've kind of really taken charge. A lot of community members either started writing up rules that we should all follow. They've started making up lore for the game. They've built some factions that I still fully do not understand, to be completely honest.
Incredible.
And they're very passionate about it. And then, yeah, I kind of grew into all of that. I got a lot of volunteers for mods, which then led me to build a mod team. And some of them were really experienced running Discord servers, and they've really helped me set everything up and put everything together. Initially, I wasn't really that worried about how to set it up or how to manage it, because I saw people just taking charge immediately after joining and figuring out, "Hey, this is new. I can actually have an impact." And
yeah,
I think that also kind of helped the entire feeling of just community. But you asked about the playtest. Sorry, I'm kind of making long points.
No, totally fine.
Too long.
All the context
let
is
me know.
helpful.
So for the playtest, I didn't want to do a public Steam playtest. I was kind of terrified of how that would go. So I figured, what, I'll do this kind of privately with the Discord. There's more than enough people here. I can probably get a couple hundred players playtesting it. So I built a really kind of small Discord bot, where people would react to a message, they get put into a queue, and then I'd be releasing keys via that queue, and the bot would DM everyone who wanted to join when it was their turn in the queue. And I got 3,000 people reacted to the message that got put in the queue. I was really shocked to see.
Unreal.
But yeah, I remember, I put together the initial playtest build, and then decided to launch it. I don't know which particular date it was, or the date. And I was so scared of everything going completely wrong that in the first batch I only let in 100 people, and they've joined. And within an hour, there were 2 guys who already decompiled the game and added a crosshair to it, which didn't exist before that. And, people just started going crazy, started modding it like crazy. And it was just kind of overwhelming to see it all happen, right? Didn't expect people to dive straight into the source code, decompile the project, start working on it, building kind of mods for it and all of that. I did have a analytics backend set up, so I was tracking, how many tries it took for people to complete a specific stage, how many attempts and all that, how many times they've died, how far they got down along the game. So I was tracking all of that stuff. It was initially horrible because the difficulty ramp up was just insanely crazy. First stage was okay, but then the second stage was already extremely difficult, and I ended up reordering all the stages, where the second stage ended up becoming the second to last because it was so difficult and people weren't completing it at all. So I had, it was kind of crazy. It was really messy. I'm not first time running a playtest of that size, or playtest at all, for any kind of thing. And I wouldn't say I have this work kind of or this SOP on how to run successful playtests. But if I do one again, I'll probably follow the same kind of thing with a private community. And I was so incredibly fortunate to have this many players interested in playtesting the game initially, because it's helped the development just massively. Not just in terms of bugs that they found. Speaking of which, I basically, for the bug reports, I just set up a Discord webhook, which I shipped with the build, and luckily nobody abused that. And they were, submitting bug reports and suggestions and everything, and I was getting everything in a private Discord kind of channel, and that was great. Actually, on the demo, it got decompiled, and then somebody started spamming the webhook immediately. So I set up a little bit of protection on that, but initially, it was really sloppily put together, to say the least. But it worked. Got a ton of great suggestions. A ton of bug reports came in. Managed to fix all of that, and that really helped me launch a demo in a really good spot. And if you go check out the reviews on the page, on the demo page, there are some reviews who say they've never played a demo that's been this polished or whatever. And I think that's kind of taking things a little bit too far. But I think the demo, because of that playtest, the demo is in a really good state.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like such a good problem to have that so many people are interested, but also I'm sure has its times where it's overwhelming and a little bit crazy to just figure things out as you go. But it's also very exciting. You mentioned the demo reviews, and you set me up perfectly here, because my next question I was hoping to ask you about one in particular, just to kind of see if the way this person described the game, if that's what you were going for. So I just want to read this review out. I thought it was really an interesting review. Intense flashing lights, fast-moving shapes, bright colors that change every second. This is easily the worst, most nauseating sensory experience I've ever endured. Yet, that is what makes this game so intriguing to me. It flips the entire process on its head and making the player uneasy, as opposed to the standard practice of making sure the player is comfortable. 10 out of 10. I'd love to see more games that draw on the player's own sense of discomfort as integral part of the gameplay, other than horror games, that is. To me, this is an untapped medium. So, kind of a crazy review, but does that resonate with what you were hoping to build, or did you really just want to prove, people wrong that somebody would be interested?
That was, initially kind of yes, but also kind of no, because I think if you ask my Discord right now whether or not they feel uncomfortable playing the game, they would overwhelmingly say no. Because I think there's just a huge subset of gamers who really do not get nauseous at all, actually kind of calm down or like really enjoy the gameplay, because it absorbs them so much and puts them into a flow state. So I think like for the majority of the fans, they're not feeling any kind of negative feelings while playing the game. But that extreme sensory experience is what I think leads to most people getting kind of nauseous just looking at the footage. And I've heard this so many times. Look, I've even heard it from some reviewers who said, look, I'd love to cover the game, but like I can't even watch 30 seconds of your trailer. Right? I'm not going to be able to do that. Yeah. Which, I totally understand. I've tried to lean into it, even with the name Sensory Overload. I've tried to build something kind of really intense, something that kind of messes with you in all sorts of ways, and I've really enjoyed the challenge. But like even like I am the type of gamer who will always turn off motion blur or head bob, because if a game doesn't have that, I will literally refund it immediately, because I get extremely nauseous playing that. But I don't experience that with my own game, and I think a lot of the community members also don't. But like for anyone who does, I think it also offers a kind of interesting challenge. Although I would kind of recommend not picking up the game if you can't watch the trailer to the end, to be fair, because it's way more intense once you're actually playing.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, it's just such a fascinating experiment of a game. I was also curious if there's been any big design challenges or technical challenges that you've come across that you've had to tackle with the game.
I think like most of it is a huge challenge to me. This is the first time I'm actually finishing a video game. I finished a board game previously. I've worked on a bunch of different prototypes, but this is the first time I'm actually taking the project from beginning to end. And I would say that I've struggled with every single kind of area, whether that's music, whether that's sound design, whether that's UI work and all of that stuff. I've had to learn a lot of different stuff, and I had to work with a lot of different people who helped me kind of put together most of the art for the game. For example, music, for me, it was really difficult to even kind of convey feedback to composers on what they did good or what they did bad, because I don't feel like I really have this developed language of talking about music. I went through 4 different composers, for example, before I settled on the last one, who did a fantastic job. And like, I'm not saying the first 3 didn't do a good job. It wasn't kind of the vibe that I was going for. But then again, I also didn't really know how to describe the vibe that I was going for. But like the 4th guy just seemed to get it. And then everything that he produced went straight into the game, with minimal feedback from me, because I feel like I'm kind of missing a good way to describe what I'm actually shooting for. But I think like the biggest challenge, at least for me personally, I think was the level design for the game. First of all, I'm not a level designer. Don't have like a big skill set here, or kind of deep knowledge on how to do that. And luckily, the game is kind of simple in terms of how it looks and how it plays and all of that. But that simplicity, I think, also leads to kind of just problems figuring out how to give a specific feel to each level. So it took me a long time to kind of figure that out for the release levels. And then seeing now running the playtest for the level editor and seeing what the community is coming up, I feel like there's like a huge potential sea out there that I haven't even tapped into or thought about, because I think the community is gonna end up coming up with way better levels than whatever is coming on release.
Yeah, love a game with a level editor, and that can ease the burden just a little bit of level design for you, because people can go play each other's games, or if they don't like it, they can solve that problems for themselves. So that's really, really cool that you've implemented that. I'm also glad that you brought up this experience with the composers, because another thing I found when diving into the reviews on the demo is multiple people really applauded the soundtrack and the sound design. So any more that we could dive into with that layer of composer, or finding that composer? It sounds like I think a lot of developers would resonate with this feeling that you're saying of, I don't know the technical words to say, but I kind of have a feeling of what I want it to be. So any tips there, if you reflect on how you got to this point of finding the soundtrack that has stuck so well?
Yeah. So initially, I didn't even know how much to pay for all of this. I've never worked with a composer before, and I started off just opening up Fiverr, trying to see because I don't really have a community to draw on of composers. I didn't really know anyone who does this sort of work. So I initially jumped on Fiverr, found someone who did, I think it was like $30 for a minute of soundtrack. I felt, let's see how that goes. And I hired that person, and I didn't really like the vibe it was going through. But also, like, to be completely fair, I think I did a terrible job explaining what I want. I knew I wanted some kind of electronic stuff, something either intense or flowy. Just, wasn't really great at explaining what exactly I was shooting for. And I was kind of really hoping to stumble upon someone who would just look at the footage and get it, right? And so I don't think the first person really got what I was kind of shooting for. And then I went and hired a second person who was charging $150 per minute, because I figured, hey, maybe I'm in kind of the wrong budget and I just need to pay more, right, to solve this problem. And that also didn't work out. It just, the vibe wasn't there. I tried their music and playing to it, and just really didn't vibe to it. And then I put that on the sidelines because I was, kind of stuck, didn't really know what to do there. And someone reached out to me who'd been watching the videos and joined the Discord, and was like, I'm a composer, but I did all of this work. I'd love to do it for this game. And I was kind of really happy that someone reached out, and I gave them a try, and also kind of didn't capture the vibe that I was shooting for. And so, out of honestly just pure desperation, I decided, hey, maybe I try paying even more, like try to go for like a premium freelancer or something. And I found this Italian composer who charged $350 per minute. And I thought it was, okay, this is a lot of money, but I'm gonna, I'll try for a minute, see what happens. And yeah, the first track was such a banger. It was in the initial release trailer. Pretty much everyone on Discord really liked it. I loved it. It was straight up the exact vibe I was hoping for in the game. And then I just basically started working with him and just spent as much money on soundtracks with him as I possibly could. And he did a banger job. Like it's, I think this has been my experience throughout my career, is when you find a good freelancer to work with, or any kind of professional to work with. Most people that you try and kind of, they won't like really get it. And then you'll find someone who gets it better than you do. At least that has been my experience. Probably because I'm not like this fantastic creative director as well, that would actually have a really clear vision on how to do things. And so I've kind of just brute forced it all. Like same thing for UI, same thing for sound effects. I had 3 different people working on the sound effects for this game. And I ended up using a little bit from every person, right? To kind of stack it all together. So I wouldn't say like I have this huge and great methodology to figuring this out, but I kind of just brute forced it and just kept raising the budget until I found something that actually worked, and probably got a little bit lucky as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think even just sharing that story of how you found your way will give people some things to latch onto. And, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, like we want all creatives to get paid, but a lot of indie devs themselves don't have the resources to go, find the premium people.
Sure.
So it's a balancing act for people to figure out, but people can hear.
I've looked at a lot of free resources in terms of music and assets and sound effects and all that. And I think there are huge libraries of stuff that works really well. And I think if you're a creative developer, I think you can find some truly amazing gems for free that you can use. I don't think I don't think I'm a particularly talented game designer, really good at it, or good at conveying the vision for the game. And I think that's why I had to rely on the talents of other people and spend a little bit more because of that. But, because the project was going so well, I think at that point I already had like 40 or 50,000 wish lists when I decided to go into the composer. Right. I figured, like this project is going well, it probably would make sense to spend a little bit of money developing it right at this point, invest a little bit into the success. I didn't just go out and start spending money on different assets. The game didn't have any music for a really long time. For most of the initial viral period, it didn't have any songs. If you check out my early shorts, they all had like these popular short musics that you hear all over YouTube or TikTok or whatever. But that ended up, working initially. But then when I saw the project really getting traction and bringing in this many wish lists, I basically decided to invest a little bit more into it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important word for people as well. It's a little less risky to invest in some resources and assets whenever your game has been validated. I mean, even if it's just wish list, people haven't bought it yet, but 50,000 is still validation, and so that's a very strong signal that there's a chance you'll be able to recoup that money. So certainly something for people to think about. Yeah, I think that's a great time to transition to some of the success you've had with all of this marketing as we kind of jump into your, mentioned your wish list numbers and stuff. And as I mentioned, I first kind of connected with you because another dev recommended you from some Reddit posts, but those Reddit posts that talked about this marketing journey have been taken down. So tell me about what happened there.
So I've been a really long time Reddit user, like probably like 10, 15 years. I've no idea, really long time. And a couple of years ago, I started sharing. I've been a freelancer for 10 years, and I started sharing posts about how to freelance, how to find clients, all of that stuff. And I've gotten a decent amount of traction on those posts. Hundreds of thousands of views, even millions of views on certain posts, tons of upvotes, tons of comments, but also always like a ton of toxic kind of stuff. I've been called like so many different names and so many different kind of things on Reddit. It's really been I kind of have a mixed kind of emotions about it all. And then for this particular journey, because I was kind of fed up of sharing stuff on Reddit because of that, because I also got a shit ton of toxic DMs, not from this post, also from this post, but from my previous post on Reddit. I've kind of decided to just, try out a different kind of platform. And so I booted up X and I created a profile there, and I started sharing stuff about the game there. And I think the first thread that I wrote there on how to go viral with shorts, it just exploded on X. I got like 250,000 views, I think.
Wow.
It was retweeted by a bunch of really cool people in the industry. And I got a lot of engagement, and I got literally zero hate off of it. So it was a really
amazing.
It was just an amazing experience to join X and connect with all of these amazing game devs. I've joined different Discords, been invited to different Discords of game devs, been able to really just meet a lot of really cool people because of it. Something that hasn't happened off of Reddit, for example. And so I think it was like 4, 5, 6 months after I made that post, where I was still getting like stupid DMs from it, that I just decided, like most people who've read that post have gotten value off it, and I'm just tired of opening up Reddit and seeing toxic shit in my inbox. So I deleted that post, and just all of that content is on X. So anyone that wants to read that, you can go to check out my profile. And I think I have better guides on X than I did on Reddit. So kind of just sunsetted Reddit. I've also sunsetted my LinkedIn. I'm completely fed up with it. So for now, it's just X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And I think and Discord, obviously, and I'm sticking to these, and they've been just like really amazing places to kind of meet people, talk to people, build a community, and everything else. And whereas Reddit really hasn't been. And even the stuff that did go viral on Reddit hasn't really moved the needle in terms of wish list or anything for the game, whereas things on all these other platforms has. So just decided to kind of focus on those.
Yeah, who would have thought that X could be a safe haven, a place on the internet? But yeah, I recently have gotten on X myself, and it does seem like a lot of game devs are utilizing X. It seems like maybe the social media of choice, other than, like the short forms where you're sharing content and stuff. But yeah, even more interesting, I guess, to this conversation is some of the substance of those posts and how you got all these views. So the title of one of those Reddit posts was how my game got 16 million views on YouTube and 18,000 wishlist in 6 days. So, I mean, that's kind of amazing numbers. A lot of indie devs would dream about that. And so, you've mentioned short form, but yeah, how were you able to accomplish that?
Yeah, so I wrote a couple of threads on this on X as well for anyone that wants to kind of dive into those and check them out. I'm also always happy to answer any questions. I'll also check out the comment section when you end up sharing this, and happy to answer anything. But the game got traction really quickly. When I launched the Steam page, I initially launched the Steam page. I immediately shared it on Discord, and then I posted a video that I just assumed would go viral as well. And then it did go viral, got like 10 million views just on YouTube.
Wow.
And I got 7,000 wish lists in the first 48 hours of setting up the Steam page. I immediately got picked up by Discovery Queue, and just started getting like a lot of traffic from discovery queue as well. And I think that's kind of a sneaky thing that at least I've been discussing with other game devs. I think Steam really values velocity, not just amount. So if you get a ton of wish lists in a short period of time, that's a very strong signal for them in terms of, if I got those same 7,000 wish lists within like 2 months, it really I probably wouldn't have been picked up by the discovery queue. But like that has been a really important experience. And then just constantly posting shorts, going regularly viral with them has just propelled the wish list like extremely quickly. I think I got 75,000 wish lists in 7 weeks. So
Wow.
it was really, it was rising really quickly while I was still kind of focused on making content for it. I think there's an important kind of thing that we have to discuss before we maybe jump into specifics on shorts
Sure.
and whatnot. And I kind of want to give an example. I'm probably a lifelong fan of the Heroes of Might and Magic series.
Mhm.
Love the game, turn-based, super, really enjoyed it. I personally have no idea how to make a viral short about that game.
Interesting.
No, I've no idea how I do it. I try a bunch of stuff, but I wouldn't really be super confident that I would know how to make it go viral. And yet it's still like a hugely successful game and whatnot. So kind of want to preface this by saying that, you don't need to go viral on shorts to have a really spectacularly successful game. And I also think that not every game is built to go viral on shorts, right?
Okay, sure.
So just kind of want to preface that. But what I do also want to say is that I think if you do have, or you're building a game that has the potential to go viral on shorts, I think it's one of the best ways to market your game. The reason being is that if you know how to put together decent content, it's extremely fast. It's not only cheap, but I got paid by YouTube to promote my game, which is completely insane. And it's just really, once I got into the flow of it, it took me an hour to put together a script, an hour to record the footage, like 30 minutes to edit it together, because I'm not a great video editor. It's just like cut, paste, like really didn't really do anything crazy there. But if you have a game that I think does well on shorts, and if you do a good job of creating the content, it's probably one of the strongest engines to get visibility on your game. And I think that's really important. And personally, I think when I tackle my next game, I will definitely consider whether or not that game has potential to go viral on shorts, because it just makes everything else so much easier, right? You're not begging streamers to play your game and hoping they put together decent or interesting content for it. You're not begging, the press or reviewers to review your game and do all of this stuff. And you're not really relying on others to market your game. And I think because I have a little bit of a background in marketing, I really don't want to rely on others selling my game for me, right? I want to be the one who's kind of in charge of this all, because it feels like I'm more in control that way. Is that okay? Is a little bit of a context to it?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. I think that's super helpful. And I think in my conversations that I've had, shorts is definitely the highest upside for indies. I don't think in this time in 2026, there's anything with as high of a ceiling for indie devs as short form, especially considering how accessible it is. Like you mentioned, like they are, easy is not the right word, but almost anyone can make a short. Making a good one, we'll dive into what that entails, and it does take some strategy and some of those things. But something you said there that I would love to dive into just a little bit more is if you have any thoughts on what makes a game suitable for shorts or not. If someone's thinking about, maybe they're even just in the prototype phase, but what are the things, as you've maybe talked to other devs in these communities, or as you would think about your next game, anything that you think that makes a game better suited for shorts versus not?
Okay. So I kind of want to maybe give a little bit, preface this with something else. I have game dev friends who go viral on YouTube and it doesn't translate into wish lists for them. Okay.
Interesting.
So that's also one factor. So getting views doesn't guarantee getting conversions, right? So I think going viral is one thing, and then going viral and also having a product that people are willing to do a lot of work for to wishlist. If you kind of think about the experience, you're doom scrolling, you come up on a short, there's no way to click a link to go to Steam to wishlist it. So you have to open up comments. There has to be a pinned comment saying, hey, here's the name of the game. You can't have a link in that pinned comment, so there's no way for them to click. They either have to click on your profile and click on a link, or they have to open up Steam, type in the name of the game, open it up, and then wishlist it. So it's, it's a decent amount of work to convince someone to go from doom scrolling to your Steam page. And I think a big part of that is just having a really appealing game. But there are two things to really making shorts work. So one, obviously, is having an appealing game that people wanna actually play and do all of this work for to go wishlist. And the other one is having an interesting personality. And I think that is not something you're born with. I think that's something that can be trained. And the beautiful thing is I'm not saying you need to be super crazy. You don't have to have really high energy. There's a lot of YouTubers who have really like mellow voices, really chill vibes going in extremely viral shorts, right? The kind of even a depressed voice, and that'll work just fine. So it's about being interesting as a person, and I think that's something that you can learn and practice. And then also having this game that kind of pulls people into, or people find interesting enough to actually go look it up. So I think those are kind of key to making shorts work in any kind of situation.
Okay, yeah, super helpful. And then I guess just one more piece of context I thought might be helpful is just to name that on your website, you're listed as a copywriter and conversion expert. So you do have some, practice and professional experience in this. So how have those things translated into this experience with game dev and trying to convert to Wishlist?
It's been absolutely critical. I treated my first short as if I was writing for a client. So it was basically work for me. I sat down. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've written, thousands and thousands of campaigns and scripts. Before this, I've gone viral many, many times on basically all platforms. Not really the video ones, because I haven't really done content for that. But on LinkedIn, on Reddit, I've gone viral quite a bit. A little bit on YouTube as well. I didn't have a TikTok account really, and haven't used Instagram. But the beauty in shorts is if you go viral on one, you can just reshare the same video on the other two, and it'll work most of the time. So that has been extremely helpful, right? That was game dev was initially how I got into writing. I built back in 2012. I started building a tabletop game, a board game, and I ended up putting it on Kickstarter, got it successfully funded, which was absolutely amazing. But I think I raised like $12,000, which was enough to put together 200 copies, and out of that, I had like $80 of profit at the end. So nowhere close enough to reorder games and all of that, and it was kind of overwhelming trying to figure out what the hell do you do now, right after Kickstarter. But I started getting a lot of messages from other people who wanted to go on Kickstarter, and you were asking for help on how to set up all the content and everything. And I kind of learned a little bit doing that first project, and that's kind of how I fell into marketing and writing and all of that stuff. So I spent 10 years writing a lot of copy, sold a lot of different products, never games. But like it all has just been extremely helpful in marketing my own game, and I think that's really important to talk about as well. Having this kind of experience of knowing how to write stuff that people want to read is extremely helpful whenever you're writing or creating any sort of kind of campaigns or shorts for your game.
Yeah, and I hope that can also, I know that sounds daunting sometimes when someone realized that the overnight success was not quite so overnight, but hopefully that can also encourage people that these are skills that can be learned. And even if your first short doesn't go viral, if your first game doesn't go viral, there's things you can practice, you can learn. And so, yeah, I just thought it would be helpful to name that context for people to know
For,
what it took
for
to
sure.
get the success as well.
For sure. I do have now game dev friends who haven't been copywriters and go regularly viral
Yeah.
on all channels. So I don't think it's a requirement by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a lot of hard work, and some people just have a bigger talent for writing, and for certain people it's just easier. But I think it's a skill that can be learned, especially just really analyzing viral shorts, what made them work, what hasn't. There is one thing that I kind of want to call out, and I sick and tired of it because I read it on Reddit like basically every day on the YouTuber subreddits or whatever, which is people feeling like they're being kind of suppressed by the algorithm. I call BS on all of that. Like if I post a short and it does terribly, the first thing I'm asking is, what did I do wrong? Like what did I screw up so badly that I didn't go viral? And I think everyone should start with that first. Don't assume that you're being shadow banned by the algorithm or whatever. More likely, and I think I kind of assume, honestly, because the velocity in shorts is really different, and I think really viral shorts go viral very fast. And I would just like, I assume that YouTube has this AI algo where they look at the script and the context of your video, and they know if whether a video has potential or not. So as soon as you post it, when they analyze it, I'm pretty sure they already kind of rate it by that point. And that's what kind of maybe feels like you're being shadow banned or whatnot. But I think like the bottom line is you need to make better content, and you need to get better at making better content. And that's really important, I think. Because the first time I went viral, it was on a fresh account, just opened, no history, nothing. You don't need subscribers to go viral. I didn't have them on any of my channels. I think that's really important to kind of internalize and really focus on what you can do to improve and just make better content.
Yeah, and even if it were true that maybe sometimes YouTube shadow banned you, every individual would be better and have a better success rate in the long run if they approached it from how can I grow? What can I do better? So yeah, and like you said, YouTube's not really incentivized, or the way I think about it is YouTube's not really incentivized to shadow ban me. If my content's good, they're incentivized to share it. So
for sure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. For you, do your shorts start from a script writing standpoint, or how does your ideation process start?
Always. So I'm constantly throughout the day, throughout anything that I'm doing, whenever I'm watching shorts, whenever I'm doing anything, I'm constantly trying to, find the next hook. And I always kind of start with the first kind of 5 to 10 words in a script. And if those aren't good, I just don't make that video. It's that simple. I do think I have a little bit of advantage because I think my experience has helped me realize when I'm sitting on a good hook and when I'm sitting on a bad hook. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's extremely helpful. If I didn't have this experience, I'd probably just record and post everything, right? Because I'd want to learn how to do it and how to figure out what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, the initial hook, that's how I start every single video. I don't know what the video is really going to be about. I write the hook, and if I feel that it's an interesting hook, I'll finish up the rest of the script, right? And I think having just constantly building and evolving a library of shorts and hooks of hooks is extremely useful. And I have a whole list of just ideas that I write down for every single video, and then I kind of go by my own personal experience, my feel. Into building out the specific shorts that I think have a chance. And I also get it wrong, but more often than not, I think I know when I stumble upon a good hook, but it's it's still quite a labor-intensive process, and I go through a lot of volume before I find one that I feel is good enough to actually turn into a short. It's not like I'll, be at home and I'll kind of think of a great short every single day. Definitely doesn't happen like that. I spend a lot of time thinking about them, whether throughout the day, just randomly, or just sitting behind my computer and trying to brainstorm ideas for hooks. So it is like a lot of conscious effort, not just in specific sessions, but also throughout the day as I'm doing anything. I always have my phone with me. I always, just write down any sort of idea. Some of my best short, I've probably woken up in the middle of the night, just took out my phone and wrote them down and went back to sleep. It is kind of random. Like, I think most creative work is like that, at least for me personally. I don't know how it is for other people.
Yeah, okay. I've heard other content creators and shorts developers in particular use this kind of, just master list of keeping these hooks or these ideas in their notes or something like that. So that certainly makes sense. For you, what then from there is the pruning process, or how do you cut out and go from, well, maybe that one's actually not a good idea, but this one I do feel like is good. What's that process feel like for you?
So my next kind of thing that I really focus on is the can I close the loop in the last sentence of the script? So open loops are an extremely important concept in conversion copywriting or viral scripts, shorts, whatever you're making. An open loop is essentially kind of that itch you get in the brain that you want to know what the answer is to a question or a statement that you just heard, where I just need to know what's going to happen. And what you want to do is, once you open that loop, and ideally you'll open that loop within the first, within the hook in the beginning, but you'll close it either in the last sentence, right? So people have to watch the entire thing to kind of close the loop. Or if you're a great copywriter, and that's not me, there's way better shorts masters in the world, what they'll do is they'll open multiple loops and close them as they go. And if you open a loop and then close it, or open a loop and open another loop and then close the previous one, and so on and so forth, the more loops you can open and close within 30 seconds or 40 seconds, the better your short is actually going to do. So open loops are an extremely important concept. I usually am way too lazy to try and cram multiple ones into a single short. So what I do is I have just a rule to try and close the loop in the very last sentence of whatever script that I'll write. So I'll have the initial statement, the initial hook, the question, whatever in the beginning, and then I'll write out the answer at the bottom, and then I kind of have to figure out what to fill in the middle, right? The middle is, of course, the pacing is important. Every sentence needs to clearly lead into the next sentence, all of that stuff. But it's not that important, right? Because the initial hook and closing the hook in the last sentence is going to carry a lot of kind of success behind it. Most people, what they'll do is they'll open the loop in the beginning and then close it immediately in the second sentence, and then people just swipe away. So you really have to make a conscious effort and really try really hard to not answer your own question or your own statement that you've put out initially, even if it's completely outrageous, right? And you have to kind of wait until the end to close that. And that's what's going to keep watch time higher, and it's going to keep people watching the short, which is what you need to go viral.
Yeah, okay. Really interesting that, starting with the hook makes a lot of sense, but I think it is counterintuitive to then your next step be, what am I going to end up with? So that's really helpful, just in this kind of framework of how we're working. We're going to start with our beginning, and then next we're going to go to our end. Can you think of an example of one of the maybe hooks that you had with sensory overload, and then the way that you ended up going to close it?
Yeah, probably most of them. Can I think of any specific examples? I don't know. Like if anyone goes through like the 40 or 50 shorts that I've posted so far, I kind of haven't been super active because I've been focused on the development of the game right now. But if I give one on the spot right now, maybe for our conversation here, if I were to say, Blake, this is the worst podcast that I've been ever in my life, right? That is a hook because you kind of want to know you're maybe invested a little bit into making a good podcast. You want to have your guests feeling comfortable, and you're going to be maybe that's a particular hook for you Blake, right? To kind of feel, hey, okay, so why, right? And then the way you would kind of keep the loop open is, but before I tell you why I think this is the worst podcast that I've ever been on, first I want to explain why I even accepted your offer to come here, right? And that's how I keep you going for another sentence, right? And you always want to kind of think about any script that you write in that way, where you write a sentence and then the only goal of that sentence is to make the person pay attention to your second sentence, and that's it, right? A lot of people kind of assume that with the first sentence, you need to convince them to read the entire thing, and you don't. You just need to convince them to pay attention for the next 2 or 3 seconds, and that's it. And then the next sentence has to do the exact same thing, right? They has to convince the person paying attention to pay, 2 or 3 more seconds of attention. That's it. And if you kind of break it down that way, and prune each sentence. And whenever you stumble upon, hey, I'm explaining stuff in this section, you just cut it all out, right? The only explaining you can do is in the last like 5 or 10 words of a short at the end, which is where you close the loop. So no explaining, that's extremely boring for most people consuming shorts, doom scrolling. So you always have to kind of keep this in the back of your mind, where you really shouldn't do any explaining or any teaching, anything like that, and just focus on the interesting stuff. And hey, I have this problem here, and this problem is terrible because of this, and this problem has now led to this entire thing completely exploding. And instead of going, hey, I have this problem here, and here's how I'm going to solve it. First I did this, and then I did that, and that's just way less interesting for the majority of people. And yeah, just to put a disclaimer, this is definitely not the worst podcast that I've been on. I'm really enjoying my conversation with you.
Oh man, you had me sweating there.
But like, that's how I think people should kind of think about. And I think in general, I think they should try and think about outrageous ideas and statements in general, especially negative ones, because humans, we tend to respond more strongly to negative things. And I think it was Marquis that talked about on his YouTube channel, reviewing phones and all of that. He said, there's only 2 ways to succeed on YouTube. You either review the best phone in the world, or this is the worst phone in the world, right? Those are the videos that get clicks, right? Everything else kind of, nobody cares about that, right? So you kind of always want to focus on that. People will respond more to the worst phone in the world, generally, because we're kind of hardwired to really respond strongly to negative news. So, try and I think Vedinat from Megabunk has like the perfect case study for a YouTube channel on the planet, right? And he's made off like a bandit with that game, which is amazing. But what I really love about him is that he created this perfect time capsule of a YouTube channel. And if you go on it and you go through all of the shorts, that's like class A, top tier educational material for exactly how to market a game. And a lot of it is negative stuff. Oh no, Steam sent me an angry email. They're going to kill me. Or, I don't know, it really literally is stuff like that. And it's worked out fantastic for him. And I think that's a really good inspiration. And I do see people copy his stuff like regularly, and it still seems to work. I don't want to say like, whenever I share a case study, it doesn't mean you should go and copy it all. And because stuff never works as well when you copy it. But if you use it kind of as an inspiration to kind of think about ideas or how things are structured or how things work. And even though in the beginning, when you don't have a huge amount of experience, it feels super unintuitive and you don't really know what you're doing. As with anything, like you gain experience through execution and through getting feedback. And I think like posting a short and not getting views is a ton of great feedback. Or, posting a short and going viral, that's also a ton of great feedback. And I think that just like cramming in as many tries as possible while also trying to technically think about the skill of writing is extremely important, and that's what makes people, better at this whole game.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And what I also find helpful about these conversations is like I'm dabbling with shorts even just for this podcast. And so I can go look at other podcasts, but it's hard sometimes to, you know, figure out what the pieces they're using are. So I think people could take from this conversation some of the frameworks that you're outlining and go look at a Venedad or even look at your channel and then kind of start to identify those pieces. And so, yeah, it's super helpful. Thanks for sharing all that. I would like to dive a little bit into the middle of a short, if we could take one more step back into that. You
Sure.
know, you've kind of framed it as you don't really need the whole thing mapped out, but each sentence just needs to carry on to the next one. So whenever you have your hook and you have your ending in mind, you've got those outlined, then how are you working in the rest of the conversation? How are you choosing how long it's going to be? Are you sort of telling a story? Like, what are you doing in the middle of that short?
Okay, so I'm never set on a specific length. I like my shorts to be over 30 seconds, 35 seconds, 40 seconds. I think that's kind of been the sweet spot for me. But I've posted shorter ones just because I felt that adding more padding into the body section of the copy just wouldn't really work, right? So it was kind of a gut feel, and sometimes I was really sad because I felt like I had a great hook, but not enough, body, and it was a little bit too short. And I feel like, YouTube also optimizes for watch time. So if you can get people to rewatch a 1 minute long short versus a 20-second long short, YouTube is just going to prefer the 1 minute long short, right? Because it has the higher watch time across the board. So, in terms of like, I think like this section feels like the one that I spend the least brain power on. Okay, but I probably spend the most time editing it.
Okay,
So,
interesting.
So usually I'll find a hook that I think is going to work well. And usually it's already in kind of the final shape, because usually it's like 4 or 5 words. If there's a filler word, I'll delete that, but I'll usually just, stick to whatever hook is. And then whatever the hook is, that's usually kind of, it's a random stroke of inspiration, let's call it that. And usually the form that it arrives in is usually decent enough. And then the end is also kind of simple because you just answer, you close your own loop. I think nobody's really going to struggle with that. I think those two parts are kind of the easiest to tackle. So for the body, what I do is I just tend to overwrite. I write way too much stuff. And then I have this rule that on every editing pass, I try to remove 20% of the words, right? And then once I do that once, I try and do it again and again and again. And I try to do it as many times as possible until I'm left with nothing that I can delete from the text. And I think that's a really good exercise in terms of copywriting, because you never kind of write the final copy at the beginning, but it's really difficult to tell people, hey, you need to edit it or think about it differently. For me, personally, I think like the best rule has been to just try and delete as much stuff from it as possible while not losing the context and the important stuff in between, right? And that exercise and just being really aggressive with the stuff that you cut away has kind of helped me really clean up the scripts and really focus on the stuff that needs to be said instead of the stuff that I want to say. I don't think you should ever say everything that you want to say in a script. You should only say the stuff that you need to say in order to make it go viral. And that means, and I know for developers, this is especially hard. That means leaving out important context whenever you're writing stuff, right? And that can be completely, that can be disingenuous. You could be presenting a point that's not really and fully captured by what you're saying. And I think like leaving things open ends up being good for virality, even though it might be, terrible for kind of the objective truth, revealing the objective truth. So I think when it comes to the middle part is sit down and write out as much stuff as you can. Just what's the whole story behind it? What do you want to share? What do you want to talk about? And following from the initial hook. And then then the next step I usually do is I cut out everything that I feel like is a filler word or anything that doesn't really fit the narrative, that the most important stuff that you want to kind of share. And then the next pass, what I try to do is ensure whether I look at every single sentence and I try to figure out whether or not that sentence makes me want to read the next sentence. And that's it. And if it doesn't, if it starts explaining or whatever, and for any reason I feel like I'm losing my own interest in this, I cut it out or try to rewrite it in a way where it's going to stay interesting. But starting with a huge amount of text, so something that's way too long, is actually kind of helpful because you have more material to draw from, and it just means a longer kind of editing pass when you're removing everything in between. You can do all sorts of things. I think like in this limited example, I think you can't really use AI to come up with viral shorts. Like, that's my personal opinion. Some people might disagree. There's probably channels out there that only use AI to go crazy viral, and God bless them. Not for me. I don't think AI is good at writing interesting hooks. I don't think it's good at writing interesting ideas. I don't think you can really rely on it to come up with good content for your game. However, I do think it can help you pad out a script once you have the initial idea and kind of the hook and all of that. I think like for beginners, for people who are getting into copywriting, I think that might make sense to kind of give it a try and use that. I personally really quickly flow from the hook to the body copy. I don't feel like I need to use like AI or other tools to come up with the main story section of it. But I think like if you kind of have those couple of pointers in mind, never explain, never teach unless it's the last sentence and you're ending the short right now, which also kind of means you need to scope your short really well, because you can't, hey, I'm going to show you how to do all of this amazing stuff. You focus on one specific small thing that you want to kind of share with people, something you can answer in a single sentence, essentially. And then for the body itself, you can literally do anything. And I think a lot of people can get inspiration from viral cooking shorts, where people are showing you how to put something together and then talking about something completely different and irrelevant to the entire discussion, right? They're not talking about, hey, now I'm putting, the tomato sauce in and doing all of this. They're talking about like some crazy family story or experience that's happened to them. So really the body can literally be anything, like literally anything. It can be completely ridiculous. It can be completely off topic. The person watching just needs to feel like you're going to get to the point eventually, right? And then you need to get to the point at the end. If you don't do that, then you create clickbait, and people hate clickbait, and you shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, just so much helpful information in there. Thanks for, letting us into the mind of a copywriter and giving us all these tips. We did have another segment we could dive into, but I am running short on time. So who knows, maybe we'll have you back after Sensory Overload launches, but let me wrap up the conversation like this. So this is the Dev Dream podcast, and I created it to inspire myself mostly, but also others. And I always find it inspiring to hear about just the aspirations of other game developers. So I'm curious for you, Tim, in this season of life, what do you hope happens from this whole game dev experience? What is your game dev dream?
A fully funded game dev studio off of this game. Sensory Overload is currently sitting at 95,000 wish lists, which I think is amazing, and I'm really hopeful for the launch. Although I've seen games flop at 160,000 wish lists, so hoping that doesn't happen here. I guess we might find out if we ever talk on a podcast again. Honestly, I'm hoping this helps me kind of transition into full-time game dev. I've quit everything else that I've been doing before to focus on this game, and then I'd love to stay in the industry and keep working on a second and third. I have no idea what those games are going to be about, or maybe you guys never hear from me again because like nothing else ever succeeds. But like, yeah, that's I don't have a kind of a set goal in mind. I'd love to continue making games. I've really enjoyed the entire process of building Sensory, the entire community, everything. I would love to be given a chance to do that again.
Well, Tim, that's a fantastic dream. I hope you're able to make it into a reality. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Blake. Likewise.